Dark academia. It's been in the news a lot lately. And so I thought perhaps today we would talk a little bit about dark academia and what it is and why it's important. Now, I've written a couple of books about horror movies and the Bible and that sort of thing. But dark academia goes beyond that. Dark academia is a literary genre that focuses on the dark aspects of higher education. So you're probably thinking something like maybe Harry Potter, and those stories could broadly fit into this. After all, Harry is shipped off to Hogwarts, where he meets with other people who are facing evil in the halls of academia. Okay, so there you have your basic idea. But there's more to it than that. There are stories that predate Harry Potter. There are stories that go back a long time, actually quite far into the history of Gothic literature, that deal with various forms of academia that have gone wrong. One of my personal favorites, that really is the first one I read in that genre, was a book by P.D. James titled Death in Holy Orders. It's about a series of murders that take place in the seminary. And in case you're unfamiliar with the way these things work, seminaries are specialized schools for people who want to become ministers. And not all churches use seminaries, but those who do have specialized schools where you've got faculty. I used to teach in a seminary. I used to teach the Hebrew Bible in one. They have faculty who are specialists in religious studies, and their idea is to train these young people for a life in ministry. So, Death and Holy Orders deals with a theological seminary in the United Kingdom, in Britain, where there is a killer on the loose. And so you get the idea, this closeted community where people come in and do nasty things. So there's dark academia. Things aren't quite right at the seminary. Probably a more contemporary example for those of you who read horror would be Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. The author in this case is actually a graduate of Yale University, and as you may know, or maybe you don't, there are secret societies at Yale, and these secret societies do have some considerable influence in the larger world. So, for example, there are presidents who've been members of those secret societies, U.S. presidents, key industrialists and business people also in these societies. And so what she tells is a story of something going wrong. These societies that are actually leading to a kind of magical interaction with the world, and not in a good way. So it's quite a gripping read, and I can recommend it. It's pretty dark. So if you're interested in dark academia, that is another place to look. But really, what I would like to talk about today is the real dark academia, the side of it that those of us who've been in it see that maybe others don't. And that is that teaching in higher education is actually a very political and sometimes very, very difficult job. You hear about professors and their book-lined studies and their lifestyles with sabbaticals and travel and writing books and kind of getting all the royalties and people fawning over their every opinion. That's not really the case, particularly in institutions where religion plays a part in it. Yeah, see, I was a religion professor, and so I lost my job teaching because of a religious difference with the administration. Now, this was back in the days before people became celebrities for doing that. I've many colleagues that I know since that time who have been fired for having different points of view, different religious points of view than the institutions at which they teach. And it can be devastating. You can lose your career, you can lose your livelihood, and you might have to scramble to find another profession. And right now, there are very few professorships open. Religious studies has been particularly bad for that for many years. And so, what happens? Well, you have to find your way in an unfamiliar world. And so, that's really kind of the dark academia that takes place in real life. And it's not a new phenomenon either. just like the dark academia literary genre. It actually goes back to a guy whose name is on the back of this brick, the Brown Driver Briggs dictionary, or classical Hebrew English lexicon, or Hebrew and English lexicon of the Old Testament, as it's called. I've used this book. It's very well thumbed for many years because it is or was, at least when I was a student, the standard dictionary for learning Hebrew. I said Brown, Driver, and Briggs. Well, the third name there, Charles Briggs, was an academic. He was actually teaching at Union Seminary in New York, and he was a Presbyterian minister, which fits for being at a place like at Union, which was affiliated or had some connection with the Presbyterian Church at one time. But Briggs fell afoul of church authorities. This was in the 1800s, and his teaching didn't fit with what the Presbyterian Church thought should be taught. This is a position that biblical scholars in particular are prone to, because being scholars, they look at the academic side of things. They try to figure out what things really happened and what they really meant. But in the idea of the church's idea of what the seminary professor should be, they should just toe the party line. You should always be doing what or saying what the church wants you to say. Well, Briggs didn't do that, and he was actually tried for heresy. Now, again, in the 19th century, that's a bit of a strange thing, having somebody tried. It's not the Middle Ages, this is not the Inquisition, and yet he lost his job because of a heresy trial. And that has continued as America has become more and more religious in some ways. Even as it becomes less religious, it's really become very difficult for instructors of religious studies, professors of religious studies, to maintain their jobs, especially in church-related schools. So I'm naturally drawn to the area of dark academia. I've only read a couple of books on it or in that genre, but I'm planning to read more because I think it really gets at something that is vital to who we are as a country and who we are as people who are innately curious and who want to learn more about the world in which we find ourselves. By the way, the pipe is just a prop. Don't smoke, not a good idea. And I hope that you found this little reflection on dark academia a useful little tool for your own way of thinking, and maybe have some ideas for some books to read. And I'll be back again with another video on some topic that broadly fits in the category of dark academia.